Hi, it's Ray Grant. It is now Thursday, December 14th. It is 12:47 a.m. I just went to the trouble of doing a video, and when I got close to the end of it, I checked the time, and I suddenly realized it wasn't recording. So I had recorded for between 1 and 2 hours without actually recording anything. Let me make absolutely sure. Okay, we are. I should have done that. Should have done that a couple hours ago. Okay. Uh, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this now. Okay. Let me. This is going to be a shorter version. You'll all be thrilled to know that this is going to be a shorter version of the video I was going to upload. So, you know, it's an example of serendipity. Um, okay, here's what I should have made this I should have made this point in my last video and I didn't, so I'm going to make it now. Um, this is a segment from episode 5 of Let's Crack Zodiac from Dave Oranchak, and see if I can do this.
Course is the solution we found for the first part because the same substitution key produced two sections of plain text that make sense. Okay, so that leaves us with the second part. The decryption didn't look quite right yet and has some recognizable words in it. We thought maybe, since this message seems close, that there was some mistake or error in the transcription or in the encipherment. That is, the rule we are using to read out the message doesn't quite work perfectly because of some mistake Zodiac might have made when he created the cipher. So we decided to look at what corrections need to be made to fix the cipher. The first thing we discovered is that many spelling mistakes happen on the same line. For example, these words are misspelled. OOW should be now. ENSUGH should be enough. Slaver should be slaves. And FOV should be for. The problem letters are OSVR. They are all on the same line. To fix the spelling, you have to change those letters to NOSR. But notice that NOSR is on the same line, but is shifted one position to the left. I sent this observation to Jarl, and he discovered if you shift this entire section to the right and move the H from the end to the beginning, it fixes the spelling of many words. We also noticed how life is appears in the clear, up in the upper right corner.
Okay, I already covered about life is. Maybe this is the way I should do videos, anyways. Do like a really long rehearsal and then just cover the main points. I'm sure. There are members of the Zodiac online community which would applaud that, or maybe just don't do any videos at all. That would help. Remember, they are not trying to protect their constitutional rights. They're trying to shut me up. That's basically what they're. When they banded together on Tom's board, they were doing that to shut me up. It wasn't that they were being kept out of the 1/400th of the board where I had moderator powers, where they had never posted before. Anyway, one of the points that I made, not only in my last uploaded video, but in the video that I never actually recorded, was threefold. Okay, and this is. While I'm at it, I will just go to. Oh, I might as well.
There's some linguistic batches to feed this into your program. How on earth is it working? Well, that's one of the nice features of Yarl's program. Like, he built that because he what kind it is. So if you have something you're looking at, an experienced cryptanalyst will go, oh, that's probably substitution, that's probably transposition.
She's from the FBI sitting behind us. Yeah. But did I understand correctly? You got 650,000 blocks of solutions that were sent to you by a colleague. Which type of program did you use for that? So you said you used batches to feed this into your program. How on earth is that working?
Well, that's one of the nice features of Yarl's program. Like, he built that because he was doing the same thing. He was creating a bunch of different tests, and each test is a rearrangement of the 340. So it's just the symbols rearranged in a different way. Then feeding that into the software, and the software we try to treat it as a regular old substitution cipher and come up with the key.
But how do you just feed it in? I mean, how do you do that?
Oh, it's just you just throw them all in one directory, and you tell it they're in that directory, and you make a little file, like a configuration file that says what they are, and then you click the button and you just wait, and it'll spit out the results in a different directory. And it has a score on each one, so you look at the ones that are high scoring.
The score is how much does it resemble actual?
Okay, I was actually giving Dave more credit than he deserved in that sense, because he just got done saying you just put all the different permutations in one directory and then you tell the computer, you go through it while I go play with my dog. And then the program gives each transposition scheme a different score. Okay, so that's basically what I said in my last video. So Nicodemus 01 may be right about that. No, I think anyone who does the work of coordinating a decipherment like that, I mean, I think deserves credit for it, because there's a lot of frustration involved, because 99.99999% of the time you're looking at results that are not satisfying at all, that aren't in English. Okay, but essentially what Dave was doing was he was feeding transposition schemes, 650,000 of them, into AZ Decrypt in the Yarl's program. He was getting, where really the work would come into is like once you got the score, is going back through the each transposition scheme and seeing what you're getting, and then saying, and I'm assuming that he used the crib feature innumerable times before he hit pay dirt with the actual decipher.
It's like a fast estimate of the quality of the readability of things.
Okay, last two questions. How much nerd do you...
A fast estimate of the quality of English that was underneath, although it's really, it comes down to getting one message out of all that. It's finding a needle in a haystack, basically. Let me go back to episode 5 if this thing will work for me. Okay. Here's what you have, and this is all in fast forward now because I already made all of these points in the previous video and just didn't record them. When you go to the undertext of Z340, and you can find all of this stuff in episode 9 of Dave's series, Let's Crack Zodiac. Okay, which is you get these back. Well, we have time. We can do that. Let's go to Is that it? No. Here it is.
Pattern are these, which resemble box corners. They are like because so many other attempts to crack it were failing. Some of us decided, what the hell, let's split it up into pieces and see what happens. Was there any clue that the cipher had multiple sections? His first cipher, the 408, was mailed in 3 pieces. And maybe these hyphens in the 340 really are a hint about the sections in this cipher. They look like fold marks right in the middle of the cipher, and they are exactly at the top of what turned out to be the second section. Here's what it looks like when we apply the substitution key to all the sections. The key says the hyphens decode to S's. Did Zodiac
They're also
see that
telling
this
you it's the
line
10th
began and
line,
ended
but
with an S and decide to mark it with hyphens? It's an interesting theory, but we don't have a way to prove it. Another pattern that caught the attention of code breakers are these repeating L-shaped patterns, sometimes called pivots. They are made up of repeating trigrams going in different directions, but meeting together at a common symbol. This one has R, J, and I repeating horizontally and vertically. And this one has backwards B, dot, and backwards C also repeating horizontally and vertically. In my other videos and presentations, I talked a lot about these patterns because they're very unusual and rarely appear naturally when making normal substitution ciphers. I've always believed that there were possibly some sign of a transposition scheme. Well, Zodiac did use a transposition scheme, but apparently it has nothing to do with these patterns. I've made thousands of test ciphers that use the same kind of transposition Zodiac used, and those kinds of patterns do not seem to appear more often just because of that scheme. Let's decode the symbols in those patterns. When you apply the substitution key to the 340, you get this transposed plaintext. The cipher patterns show up because of these repeating patterns in the plaintext. You can see O, S, and E repeating in the one on the left, and E, N, and E repeating in the one on the right. But when you unfold the message to get the original, those letters are spread out. There's not really a pattern to it, so maybe they are just appearing by chance. But when Zodiac assigned his symbols, there was only a rather small chance of preserving those patterns, because he had multiple choices for each letter. For example, he had 4 symbols to pick from for the 2 O's, but picked R for both of them. He had 4 symbols for the S's, but picked J for both, and 6 symbols for the E's, but picked I. There's a similar story for the second pivot. He picked the backwards B for both of these E's, then the dot for both of these N's, and the backwards C for both of these E's. If he was assigning symbols completely randomly for both patterns, there was only about a 1 in 17,000 chance of accidentally preserving both of those patterns. So it's possible he saw those patterns and tried to preserve them on purpose, so they'd show up in his final cipher and confuse code breakers. Well, I can't really prove it one way or another, but one thing's certain. It definitely confused me and many others for a very long time. A sort of related type of pattern are these, which resemble box.
That's what I'm talking about here. And whatever you want to call those backward L's, Dave said there's a 1 in 17,000 chance of those appearing by accident, okay? You also have, that's the first, all I'm doing is citing examples in the undertext of manipulation by the person who created the cipher, okay? I've already pointed out, I think I pointed out in the last in the last uploaded video, okay, that essentially what you have here and in what was just demonstrated there is it's like if you're doing the New York Times crossword puzzle and the theme is, Christmas, so that the answers in the crossword are, Santa Claus or reindeer, okay, or Saint Nicholas or what have you, but they will all be associated with what the overall theme is. In other words, there is a secondary message in some of the New York Times crossword puzzles that comes about as a result of your filling in the grid, okay? What you're primarily trying to do is fill in the grid with letters, okay? And then once you do that, you may end up in sometimes in some crossword puzzles, they get these interesting patterns in the final grid where there's a statement in there or something like that. Okay, so you get a whatever you want to call it, a secondary message. And I pointed out that Z340 is at the very least a two-step cipher. Okay, I said that Z408. I've been saying since 1990, 1980, 1989, I guess, 89, 90, that Z408 was a two-step cipher, and the 18 letters at the bottom were not just filler. Okay, and I've also been saying that the Z408 cipher as published is not the same cipher that was sent by the Zodiacs. It was altered by a police artist, and 20 of the symbols are different. Okay, so so in Z408 is a two-step cipher in the sense that obviously the last 18 letters are in English. So what are they? Obviously, some sort of secondary operation has to be applied for them. That is even more obviously true of Z340, since before you can decide what these symbols mean, you have to figure out what the correct order of their arrangement is, so that then you can apply letters to the symbols and figure out if they read as English yet. If you don't untranspose the cipher grid first, you're never going to get to that. Okay, so Z340 is at the very least a two-step cipher, but however, in this sense, it is at least a three-step cipher. Why? Because, as I said, the cipher creator is having a conversation with, like the Christmas theme, with cryptographers, with anybody who is as bright enough as Dave Oranchak is to be able to translate the cipher, to figure out that it's a transpositional cipher, and then figure out what the values for the symbols should be. Okay, then beyond that, you have this, as you have the backward L shapes that Dave just demonstrated. I just showed you. You also have the 26. I can play that now. I think I'm not a well. Let me see what else he has here.
Corners. It's because he's cycling through the symbols in his key completely by chance, or did Zodiac highlight them? I wonder if we would ever be able to find out. There is still another big mystery about this cipher. How did he assign the symbols from his key to his message? We know the key he used to hide his message, but we don't know how he made it, or how he decided which symbol to use for letters that have more than one symbol to pick from. Here's the key for his first cipher, the 408. When he assigned symbols for a letter, he often used a simple system. For example, his key has these symbols standing for the letter E. Here's his full message, and all the E's. After encrypting the message, the E's show up like this. If you read through them in order, they make these repeating patterns. It's because he's cycling through the symbols in his key. In the 340, there's some evidence of that kind of cycling, but it is very weak. There are no long patterns of sequences that are as strong as the ones in the 408. There are only some shorter ones, like these. And the patterns don't become stronger if we look at the untransposed version of the cipher. So did he use some method, or was he just picking symbols randomly? I wonder if he knew codebreakers would have looked for those patterns, and so tried to make his assignments less predictable. There are some interesting things we know about Zodiac's symbol assignments. First, he tried very hard to avoid repeating symbols along row-sized chunks. Jarl discovered these 26 row-sized chunks that have 0 repeating symbols in them. If Zodiac was assigning symbols more randomly, there would have been far fewer of those chunks. So it's like he was trying really hard to avoid repeating symbols within that row-sized window. The second thing we know is that there is a group of symbols that seem to avoid this middle section. Consider all of these symbols. Let's highlight everywhere they are found in the ciphertext. Isn't it strange how they avoid that middle section? You can't find any of these symbols there. Why do they do that? Sam had an idea that maybe Zodiac was encoding from the top and bottom at the same time and purposefully changed up the scheme for that middle section. Even in the untransposed version of the cipher, there's another set of symbols missing from the same middle section. Why? Is this by accident, or does it reflect the method Zodiac used to make his substitution key? This could be worth further study. All of these strange things about the 340 remind me of how lucky we were to solve it. Zodiac came up with such a strange scheme, either from his own imagination.
Just to touch on that last point, if you go to episode 6, let's do that, and then I know I'm trying your patience, but
Thank you, Daikon, for sharing your insights. Piece. It has this message. I hope you are having lots of fun and trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise, although. Let's rewrite it, without spaces, into a grid with 17 columns. So now it looks like this. Now let's rewrite it again, but this time, let's write it along the columns instead of the rows, like this. The resulting message is not readable in the normal direction, but it still makes sense if you read it along the columns instead of the rows. Next, let's split the grid in half along the diagonal into 2 triangular sections like this. Now we create another grid that is split in half the same way, but the triangles are flipped around. Let's write the first triangle into the same triangle in the other grid. Notice how it's the same text, but now it's lined up along the right side instead of the left side. Then we do the same thing for the second triangle. The letters inside that triangle are now lined up on the left side instead of the right side. And that's the final result for the first section of the message. After applying the substitution key we discovered, that's the exact way the plaintext was arranged. To get the message back to how it looked when we started, we could apply the reading rule from the previous video. That is, we could start at the first letter, then move down 1 position and write 2 positions, like the movements of the knight piece in chess. Or we can just draw our triangles back and reverse the process we just went through. Then we can simply read the message along the columns. So that takes care of the first section. Zodiac did the same thing for the second section, but he had some twists. Here's the message from the second section. Sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid, because I know that mine knew. Again, let's rewrite it without spaces into a grid of 17 columns. We are going to rewrite the message along columns again, but with the first twist. He wrote the words, "life is," in the upper right corner of the grid. So now we write the message along columns. When we get to the words, "life is," we just write around them. Now we are ready to split it up into triangles again. Here's our new grid with the triangles flipped around. Let's copy the text from the first triangle. Then copy the text from the second triangle. Now at this point, we should have been done. But this is where Zodiac's second twist comes in. For some reason, when he copied the second triangle, he left out this H. So the H is gone from here, which means he shifted all these letters, R-A-T-E-N-Y, 1 spot to the left. And he also shifted all these letters, R, N, O, S, R, V, S, one spot to the left. This left a blank spot at the end, which is where the missing H ended up. And now we have the final result for the second section of Zodiac's message. Now let's look at how he set up the third and final section of his message.
Okay.
It says, life will be an easy one.
Okay, I think basically that makes my point, which is that is a fairly simple transposition. It's just changing the sequence from horizontal to vertical. Okay, and then just creating a diagonal, whatever you want to call it, a bisecting line, where half the message is in the red part and half the message is in the blue part. It's almost like politics. But the point is, it's like the period 19 phenomenon is really just a result of using a diagonal grid like that. I think I am not a cryptographer. However, I would point out that that seems to be a very simple transposition. It would not surprise me at all if that exact transposition is in the Army code manuals. Okay, so so the Z340 should have been solved with if the transposition angle had been attempted, and plus I don't think it would have necessarily taken luck on the part of the cryptographers. I think it would be a combination of but transposition was used by the Army, so I mean, they couldn't have taken that path to solving it, and that plus access to whatever, a mainframe computer, they should have been able to do it. Okay, it shouldn't have taken 51 years if we are to take cryptographers seriously. But the point to be made here is that just the first 3 points that Dave makes in what I just played for you, the backward L's, 1 in 17,000 chance of getting this sort of result. Okay, and it isn't as if, look, it's not as if that you can't find an apparent pattern in what is actually, you can generate something that is random and find a pattern in it. Okay, that isn't unheard of. Okay, however, when you have multiple patterns, okay, like this, okay, I would think it would pretty much do away with the idea that there is anything just random about this. That clearly, whoever was creating the cipher was extremely meticulous about what he was doing. Okay, so that's what you have with the backwards L. It's what you have with the 26 row side chunks, and remember, each row is 17. Okay, without the repeat, and with the absence of certain symbols, and in the center of the cipher grid, center of the grid, regardless of whether it was transposed or not transposed. Okay, so what you have with and I actually wrote all this stuff out in the original video, so it's already written out. So, but what Dave ends up with here initially is 1 through 17 of whatever row this is. Is this row? I should have looked when I had it on there. Let me see. Let's do episode 9 again.
these, which resemble box corners. They are like smaller versions of the repeating backwards L or pivot patterns.
Oh,
they correspond to these
episode
repeating
5.
groups of A, S, and E in the transposed message. Unfolding the message splits them up, just like the other patterns. So are OSVR. They are all on the same line. To fix the spelling, you have to change those letters to NOSR. But notice that NOSR is on the same line, but is shifted one position to the left. I sent this observation to Jarl, and he discovered if you shift this entire section to the right and move the H from the end to the beginning, it fixes the spelling of many words. We also noticed how life is appears in the clear, up in the upper right corner. Jarl also discovered that if you ignore this section when...
So is it line 15? I'm not sure. I think it's line 15. Anyway, this is what Dave ends up with when he does his original transposition, okay? And then when they figure out they have to move everything except the first 3 letters, 1 character to the right, and then take the H at the end and move it to the 4th position. Then you end up with an English plain text, which is mostly readable. It's still going to have things in it which are not entirely. Let me see here.
When applying the diagonal read, I am not afraid because I know that my part. And here's the resulting message.
So what you're going to end up with, for example, is sue her because ye now have enough slaves to werve, W-R-V for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new.
An easy one.
And as I said, this isn't that different from reading comments on Zodiac Killer message boards where you have people misspelling, common words in English, and you have to figure out what the intent was, okay? But you're still assuming that you're making the assumption that that what was intended was English, and not only making that assumption, but assuming that that's what your end result was going to be. And as I have said, what all of these manipulations of the undertext suggest is that there's some other theme that's being hinted at, like in the New York Times crossword puzzles. And the point I'm trying to make here is that to go from here to here, you have to assume that someone who has created these sorts of manipulations, and there are other manipulations that that I could play for you that Dave talks about on there. For someone to create this level of complication beneath the plain text, okay? Once you have gotten to a readable plain text, to have those additional messages from the cipher creator to cryptographers, okay? You have to assume a certain level of meticulousness, it seems to me, okay? When I demonstrated here that I was doing my conversion from David Faraday to Easter. I can also do Darlene Ferrin to this is, although I'm using digital Morse code with 1 for dash and 0 for dot, this is basically just Morse code redivision. It's letters to letters, okay? So I could have used dashes and dots as well, okay? But the point to be made is that when I was creating this, and if you have been watching my videos, you'll see the same thing. is I will create the line of Morse code digits, and then I will look at it. And I actually had difficulty initially finding Easter because I didn't realize that the A in David was exactly the same as the A in Easter. In other words, it's not a redivision. It's basically a direct translation. And you get the E from the end of the D, and then you get the S and the T from V. V is dot, 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 dash, and S is dot, 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 and T is dash, okay? So that's how you go from David to Easter, okay? But when I was doing it, I looked at it, and again, you can go back and look at my videos where I'm staring at it and I'm saying, is that right? I mean, no, that can't be right. Okay, it is right, you know. In other words, somebody who is doing this in the undertext of Z340, okay, would not make a mistake on this level because he is going to a tremendous amount of trouble to create, creating a transposition grid, which is consistent enough that, remember, the Zodiac wants you to be able to solve he wants to make it as difficult as possible, but he wants a solvable grid, just as when the New York Times puts out a crossword, they want you to eventually get it, or they want the best crossword solvers to be able to get it. There wouldn't be any point in putting out a puzzle that nobody can get. It's the same idea here, okay? So, as happens in the Jason Bourne movies, okay, and as I don't know if I said it in this video, I don't even remember which video I'm doing anymore, but Richard Merrick was my editor at Independent Editors Group. He was also the editor for Robert Ludlum, and in one of the Bourne movies, one of the CIA operatives suggests that Jason Bourne may have made, or he may be making a mistake, and the head of the agency says he doesn't make mistakes. Okay, somebody who is doing this, I'm sorry, it should be backwards. Somebody who is doing this, okay, would not make a mistake on this level, because at some point, as you saw me do with the David and Easter, or you've seen me do earlier in this video series, I'm going to stop and check my work and ask myself, is that right? Is that the right sequence, or what have you? Somebody who's gone to the tremendous amount of trouble to create a transpositional cipher grid isn't going to make a mistake on that level unless he intends to make it. Now, the next question would be, well, wait a minute. Why would the cipher creator of Z340, I'm telling you, it was you, Penn, okay? But whoever it was, why would that person then endanger his the cipher being solvable, which he needs? I mean, otherwise there wouldn't be any point, unless the idea was to just to frustrate people, as myself and other people pointed out. Z340 might just be gibberish, okay? But it turns out that, Dave, to his credit, proved that it wasn't, and Sam and Jarl proved, to their credit, that it wasn't gibberish, that there was method in their madness, okay? Though this be madness, yet there is method in it, okay? So there is method in Z340, but if that's the case, then you're so smart. Why would you possibly endanger that by introducing an error on that level, okay? Well, first of all, if you've gotten to that point in the cipher, you've already figured out what the transpositional scheme is, okay? So in that sense, he probably isn't endangering the solution, okay? um, I think the writer of the cipher at that point is saying to himself and is saying to the cryptographers who are chasing him, okay, if you've gotten to this point, then you have figured out what I'm doing. Now I'm going to throw you a curve, basically. And he does that. And the immediate supposition that Dave makes is, oh, he made a mistake, okay? I don't think that's a mistake. I think what that does is it underscores that we are intentionally producing apparent mistakes in order to maintain, just like in a wrestling show, what got if you follow WWE, what got the clique in trouble for for the Madison Square Garden show? What got them in trouble is they basically dropped character while they were in the ring, okay? And you're not allowed to do that, okay? In wrestling, you have to, even though it is scripted, and even though that WWE is essentially by doing like charity events and doing meet and greets that with military on aircraft carriers and so forth. They're essentially admitting, look, the bad guys that you see during the show aren't really bad guys. They're just like normal people, and we're playing characters. But you don't come out and say that. It's just, that's like somebody in a movie. It's like what Emma Stone says about the thing she always wants to do when she's doing a movie is at some point turn towards the camera and go like this, or what, I don't know which eye to use, but basically wink at the audience and say, we're just kidding, or we're just having fun with you. You can do that if it's subtle enough, okay? And essentially, I would argue that that's what the cipher creator is doing here, is that he is forcing you. It's been bad enough that that Dave spent 51 years of his life, since Dave received a copy of Z340 in 1969. I'm not sure Dave was around back then, but I was. But I received my copy. But it's bad enough that they forced you through the transpositional scheme. Now he's like shifting everything one character to the right on you, and I think it's the Zodiacs basically going like this and saying, you see all the misspellings that we're doing and so forth. That's just to give to throw people who aren't paying attention off and make them go, running away, and maybe we'll end up. It's kind of like when they do kung fu and all the kids show up because they want to be in the monastery, and they end up only taking one kid because he's the one who stays in the yard the entire time, and then when he goes in and they invite some of the the handful of kids who are left in, he's the one who waits for the master to drink, whereas the other kids don't. And so he's chosen as being worth their attention. It's the same idea with the Zodiacs, which is we're going to kind of like separate the wheat from the chaff here and hope that you're paying attention by demonstrating things like this. And what is frustrating about Dave Oranchak is that Dave is smart enough to see all of this stuff, but he still thinks that things like the shift are mistakes, okay? And I don't see how some. I mean, there's so many other things in the Zodiac case that point away from that. I don't get it. I mean, serial killers generally do not stop what they're doing. They're generally motivated by compulsions. That's I mean, Ted Bundy was a bright guy, but he was still obeying the very primal compulsions that he had. Same thing with Dennis Rader. Same thing with Dennis Rader wasn't particularly bright. Same thing with Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway was almost developmentally challenged. Okay, but basically, what you have with serial killers are people who have impulses that they can't control. And generally speaking, serial killers don't go out and change their modus operandi every time they hit the street. And yet, that's exactly what the Zodiac killers were doing. So you have all of these red flags pointing away from the assumptions that Dave is making, and he still makes them. You know, it's let me see where I am here. Okay. Maybe my video should be like under an hour, maybe like 45 minutes. Maybe more people. I'd have more subscribers, and but that's the point. The part of the point that I'm trying to make here is that you can't produce something like Z340. You certainly can't have the background that that someone like that would have would have to have. Okay, regardless of whether you were in the military or you were such an expert on transpositional schemes that you knew what the military was doing. Okay, um, you would have to be an extremely bright person and extremely meticulous, and that sort of person would not make the mistakes that Dave, for whatever reason, believes that they're making. Of course, when Dave reads Time 17, he assumes that Gareth Penn is making mistakes. Okay, or which is almost as ridiculous, that Gareth is intentionally that he's being dishonest, and I don't think either of those things is true. I think Gareth Penn is basically presenting this blinking neon sign saying, look, I know that these strings that I'm citing are too short to be valid. Therefore, you should ask yourself why somebody who is as bright as I am is presenting these arguments. Okay, it's kind of like, and I'm getting tired of making this point, but it's like watching wrestling and assuming that it's sincere. It is scripted. Okay, what you're seeing is scripted, and it's aimed at a particular type of audience. Although sometimes, as Kevin Nash has pointed out, they will do things in matches that are aimed at people who are aficionados of wrestling. And Kevin has said things like, okay, you know, when he comes back to the locker room, well, you know, that was pretty interesting for the 4 or 5 people who got it. You know, in other words, essentially they're breaking the fourth wall, and they're performing in a scripted activity, but they hope that you get these little jokes that they're inserting there. Okay, so that's kind of what the idea is with the Zodiac, and you try explaining this to Dave, and he doesn't get it. As I said, if Dave is willing to debate, well, he isn't. So there's no point in making the challenge, because he's never going to be. But the point to be made is that what the Zodiac ciphers point up is that they're essentially busy work, and they're essentially there to distract you from other things that are going on in the in the Zodiac case, and there are things like, as I pointed out, the punched hole in the in the Lake Tahoe card, which is then immediately pounced on by police agencies as being the burial place for Donna Lass. They're assuming that the Lake Tahoe card refers to Donna. They're assuming it's from the Zodiac. They're assuming it refers to Donna Lass, and they're assuming that the punched hole is a reference to wherever she is buried. Okay, so among other things, they're assuming that a Zodiac victim has been buried somewhere on the landscape for whatever reason. So I'm making those same assumptions. Okay. The police didn't get hell for it. I do. So I don't know what to say. But if if you're going to challenge people's the assumptions that people make, you have to be ready for that sort of response. Was there anything else I wanted to talk about with Dave? We talked about I mentioned with Graysmith, Dave's, and I encourage people to look at Dave's all of Dave's videos. What I pointed out with Graysmith is that you see the same great thing with Graysmith that you see on Zodiac killer message boards, which is that when Graysmith is trying to decode Z340, if there are symbols that don't fit in with his decoding, he just gets rid of them, or he ignores them. Okay, and you can't do that obviously if you're going to do a direct decipherment. And the same thing is true, for example, if you're looking at Riverside, or you're looking at Lake Herman Road. If you're looking to Riverside, you can't just ignore the fact that a reenactment was done and nobody saw Sherry Bates. That was a major production. It's the most significant thing any police agency has done with regard to any of the Zodiac related activities. Okay, and yet, if you go on Zodiac killer message boards, everybody assumes that Sherry Bates was in the library that night. Why? Because the confession letters says that. Okay, what possible motive could the killer have to mislead us about what happened during the murder? Okay, we have to take what he tells us at face value, and we have to assume she must have been in the library even though nobody saw her that night. Okay, same thing with Lake Herman Road. Okay, what was the car doing parked in the gate number 10 turnout for whatever it was, 35, 40 minutes? Why did a car chase William Crowe out of the turnout? Okay, why is it that the Faraday Rambler wasn't seen except by, if you assume that one witness saw them there, but then they were only seen there for 5 or 10 minutes, then they weren't there, then they were there, okay? Or the car was there, okay? So it's the same idea. I mean, you have to at least reconcile everything that you get, and you may end up deciding that a given witness is wrong about a certain sighting or a certain interpretation of what he or she saw, which is fine, but it is your obligation to take everything into consideration. As I said, I am disappointed that Dave Oranchak has this creationist view of the case, where he and I'm not going to do it tonight because it is almost 2 a.m. So it's 1:41 a.m. right now, and that's because I did a video and I found out it wasn't recording. I will go into that in my next video. Is the general idea about about things like conspiracies on Zodiac message boards, and um, I will probably be branching out reasonably soon. Um, I'm doing a debate apparently with Richard Grinnell just before Christmas on Ross's channel. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be interesting to see what uh, what form that takes, and whether how I hope it is a serious discussion. I have seen debates on so-called debates that aren't really debates. It's basically people presenting, particularly with Haran, where the other debater basically allows the Haran just to run amok and just talk until somebody interrupts them, without challenging anything. They're challenging very much of what he says. Um, I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm actually hoping that my debate with Richard Grinnell is at least somewhat contentious, because these are serious issues, and if you disagree on details of the Zodiac killer case, which is the most complicated serial murder case in history, then I think that those points need to be addressed, and people should, anyone who's seriously debating the case should be grappling with those issues. Okay, so I expect to have my feet, thrust into the fire, and I expect to do that to my any debating opponent that I have, and I think that's the only way that you can respect the case and respect the victims, and because otherwise there's really no point. To be blunt, I don't do this as a form of entertainment. I do it as a way of eventually reaching an audience who will take what I'm saying seriously. As I've said before, I think it is a fool's errand trying to change the minds of people who, for the most part, people who post on Zodiac Killer message boards, because it's been my experience that all of those people have pretty much made up their minds what they think about the case. And it's like trying to change their religions, okay? And unfortunately, you would hope that somebody like Dave would be open-minded and would look at he is very fairly recently now. This happened, the solution to the cryptographic solution to Z340 happened almost exactly 3 years ago, just like 3 years and a week ago, 3 years and 10 days ago, was when Dave first saw. That wasn't me on the TV show. So the undertext of Z340 gives us evidence of, as Sam Blake would say, who these people really are, and what and narrowing down what sort of person we're dealing with. Well, I think this pretty much narrows down what sort of person we're dealing with. But uh, if all we're going to get as a result of being able to translate something like Z340 is a bunch of videos of various people here in the United States reacting to the solution on news programs, and then internationally, then that's unfortunate. And I honestly don't. Let me see what we got here. Is that? Oh, it's just about an hour. Well, that's good. Um, I don't actually blame Dave for that. I think, as I said, the follow-up videos, episode 6 and episode 9, do very good work in giving me material, giving me content for this kind of thing. Okay. I wish Dave could just make that final leap and land on my side of the my side of the divide. Okay, but um, that comes down to being able to admit that you were wrong or that you had the wrong impression of what you were dealing with. And when I wrote my original book on the case in 1990, that's basically the assumption that I made was that because the 1990 book dealt with, well, it dealt with stuff like this, like the Michael O'Hare material, the progressive architecture stuff, the USGS benchmark data, and determinist triangle. But what it didn't deal with is the criminological stuff. And the reason for that is that I assumed that that's just a picture of the cover of the 1990 book, and it's all black except for the lettering. And shown this already. That's the cover of the Men's Bulletin, July, August 1985, and that's where they talk about Gareth's article down there. But when I wrote the book in 1990, I assumed that the crimes were just committed conventionally. It was just a matter of Michael O'Hare going to Lake Herman Road and doing basically what your standard poster on Zodiac message board believes, that some guy pulls in. What is the guy? There's a guy on my. Let me see if I can go to Ray Grant Zodiac and videos, and oh no. So I'm going to talk. Okay, so this guy. Your version involves kidnapping kids in a car. This is Keratos. The evidence points to a simple conclusion. 2 teenagers on their first date together went off to find some privacy, eventually parking on the side of the road. A short time later, around 11:15 p.m., a second vehicle pulled up beside them, and a man with a flashlight got out, telling them to get out of their vehicle too. Likely assuming it was the police, they both exited the vehicle on the passenger side. Likely moments later, David was shot point blank in the head. Betty Lou understandably began to run away and was shot in the back as she ran. David was shot once, Betty Lou shot 5 times. The shots to her were biased to the right side of her back. That sounds like he's been reading Grinnell's website. Considering she was only nearly hit with some rounds, it is likely the killer missed at least once and possibly twice while shooting at her. I don't agree with that. Almost as if he had taped a flashlight to his gun and was pointing at the center of the light to aim, but the light wasn't perfectly lined up with the barrel. The killer then fires the remaining rounds from his pistol at the vehicle while going back to his own. There were 10 casings at the scene, 6 wounds, and 2 hits to the car, leaving 2 misses, assuming the cases were all related. The locations of the casings was fairly erratic. That's not true. And one was found inside the vehicle, but this is consistent with a single shooter ejecting casings towards the vehicle and the casings bouncing off the side of the vehicle. Fits all evidence and testimony, plus lines up with the single killer that would later take credit for the crime. That is not true, okay? If you look carefully, if you look closely at the evidence on Lake Herman Road, that's not true, okay? However, what that guy just said, what I just read to you, and what he said, and obviously was not a particularly good-natured, not a good-natured post, I didn't think, and my response to it wasn't in good humor, okay? But keep in mind that that's basically what I thought too. When if you I have a copy of this upstairs, but if you read The Zodiac Murders Solved, that's basically what I say. So, for example, Richard Grinnell's contention that my analysis of the eyewitnesses on Lake Herman Road and elsewhere is motivated by my allegiance to some presupposition. It just isn't true. I mean, the original assumptions that I made were the same as what the guy I just quoted to you made, which is that it was a case of, the only difference is I was identifying who it was. I was saying Michael O'Hare drove up, shot the two victims, drove back out of the turnout. Something similar with Sherry Bates, similar to the confession letter. I assume that's what happened. And everything after that is pretty much what you see is what you get. So I never went into what actually happened during the crimes. And I didn't start doing that until, as I said, I had that conversation with Sean O'Brien towards the end of 2010, the beginning of 2011, December 2010, January 2011, on Tom's board, where we were analyzing the Lake Herman Road police report, the Solano County Sheriff's Office police report. And we start going, well, this witness says this and this other witness says that. And, I didn't have any intention of analyzing the crimes, because I thought that, I already knew what happened pretty much. I was like J.R. Dubs, J.R. Dubs doesn't have to look at the evidence because he already knows what happened, okay? Same thing with Dr. Nika, same thing with Aussie Duger, all those people, the same thing with Equal Temporary 1326. All of those people over on Reddit already know what happened. We don't have to look at the evidence. But I mean, I felt that way too. I mean, so in other words, I was once a hobbyist, okay? The only difference between me and a hobbyist is I'd already accused living people of the Zodiac murders. And I had I'd already figured out who did it, and I had multiple suspects, and I confronted them in public, at their place of employment. Okay, so in that sense I was different, but in terms of my attitude towards the actual crimes, I was not distinguishable from your average hobbyist. It wasn't until Sean and I started going back and forth over, and Sean would say, for example, about Helen Axe, well, Helen Axe knew the victims. And I said, how does Helen Axe know the victims? The victims had only been together for, or whatever I did. I have the back and forth on my computer somewhere. It's no longer up on Tom's board because I took all the, when they were deleting all of my posts, when I don't know if it was Vincent Graves. Let me see. 110. Okay. When Vincent Graves and well, Sean O'Brien actually, not maybe not the. That may be a false accusation of the late Vincent Graves, who died, I think, in 2014. But Sean O'Brien was deleting my posts, some of my posts, as moderator. And my reaction was, why are my posts being deleted? Are you deleting other people's posts? And mine are longer than other people's posts are. So I would leave my house and go down to the bus stop, and I'd look at the Zodiac Killer message board, and my post would already be deleted, okay? Which I wasn't happy with. And Sean eventually ended up just leaving the message board. But you know, at some point, I said, fine, I'll go you one better, and I'll just delete all my posts myself. So I ended up deleting the posts that I put up with Sean. I will probably put that up somewhere. I don't know. I'm not sure, since I'm primarily doing like a YouTube channel now. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to put that sort of material. I'm not going back to Tom's board, so. But at some point, if I revise my book or put out another book, I may put up the conversation between Sean O'Brien and myself. But that is about looking at the evidence and the witness statements on Lake Herman Road, and realizing that you can actually create a timeline and you can reconstruct what happened. And once I started doing that, I came to the assumption, and came to the same assumption in Riverside, that the victims were actually abducted prior to their murders. But before the end of 2010, I didn't believe that. So I believe the same thing that people on Zodiac Killer message boards believe, which is that the crimes, although they weren't quite spontaneous, were done the way most people assume they were done, by the killer showing up suddenly in the gate number 10 turnout and shooting the victims and then leaving and so forth. So maybe there's hope for that. I doubt it, but maybe some people are open-minded enough that they will do the same thing that I did. And again, I point out that my view of what happened during the crimes was not self-serving, because I think I said at the outset, I may have said it to Sean, there really is no point in looking at evidence and having some sort of preconception about it before you begin analyzing it. You really have to take a step back and say, whatever, let the chips fall wherever they may, and let me look at the evidence and decide what I think. And I've changed my mind. Obviously, in the case of Richard Grinnell, he changed my mind about whether or not the Zodiac spoke to Donald Falk. Richard Grinnell convinced me that they did in fact talk to the Zodiac, because that explains why they drove all the way to Arguello Boulevard. And I've changed my mind about other details in the case. I just fairly recently decided that I had initially assumed that Peggy Ure saw the Rambler parked in the turnout, but while I was doing the earliest videos in this series, Zodiac Killer Chronology, I began looking at Robert Conley's statement, and the police say that Conley insisted that he saw the Rambler on the right side of the turnout facing in. This is after Peggy Ure would have passed and saw the Rambler facing eastward. And I initially had thought, well, Conley must just have been wrong about that, because the Rambler was found facing east. There wouldn't be any reason that I can think of why David Faraday would change the position of the car. And frankly, I mean, Grinnell has not come up with any convincing reason to do that. I mean, clearly, if David Faraday was driving the car, then he had moved the car before the killer showed up. Why? Why, if you were going to leave the turnout, you would just pull out of the turnout. You would just make a left turn or back the car up and you would be on Lake Herman Road. There wouldn't be any reason to back the car up so that it was facing in the direction of the gate and the south fence. And as a result of that, when I thought about it, I thought, well, maybe Peggy Ure didn't see anything, and what Robert Conley saw was the Zodiacs originally pulling the Rambler into the turnout, seeing Conley, driving up Lake Herman Road from the bottom of the hill, pulling in, maybe ducking their heads down, and Conley driving by and seeing the car the way it was. Okay, that makes more sense than the version that, because if Conley is right, then you have David Faraday doing something that doesn't make any sense. If you're leaving it's 11 minutes. It's 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. You're already 5 minutes past your curfew. It's going to take you at least another 10 minutes to get back to the Jensen home. More than between 10 and 15 minutes to get back there. So you're going to be well over the curfew. Um, uh, I can't think of any reason for backing the car up, but maybe Grinnell will come up with one during our debate. I don't know. Anyway, where are we now? We're at all right, about 117. Okay, that's good enough. So this is not the original video that I did. So, but maybe this is better. This is less dead air, shorter video. Maybe this is what I will do. Maybe I'll do like an hour or so of rehearsal or something, and then go ahead and record a video. Anyway, this is just some cleaning up of some of what I did in the last video. I will probably just go with whatever comes next in my book in the next video, but anyway, I appreciate everybody watching my videos. I'm not getting comments anymore. For a while there, I was getting comments. I guess I'm just removing too many comments. That's what the problem is. But if you have any legitimate questions that you would like to ask, or if you have a problem with something I'm doing, you want to defend Dave if you want, or if you're Dave, okay, and you want to comment below. See, I'm not like Dave. I won't. Dave removed my comments, but I won't. What I'm worried about now is that Dave has hid me from his channel, because I would have to log out of YouTube to find out whether he has done that or not. And I'm not willing to do that because I'm internet stupid, and I may not be able to log back in, and I have YouTube Premium, so I'm afraid that I'll have to go back to watching commercials on YouTube again. So anyway, thanks for watching the video. I hope this clears some points up from the last one. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, but it'll be right here if I do anything next, or if I don't do anything. It won't be here. But as I said, I appreciate people watching my videos, and I will try to be more maybe I should be more concise in my videos now. Maybe I'll start to move in that direction. I don't know. But thanks for watching. I will talk to you soon.